Good morning, everyone. It appears we do have quorum, so I think I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Economic and Community Development Committee. I would like to welcome the committee members and also visiting members of council. I see Councillor Ainsley who's visiting us today. You have an item on the agenda, and I'm sure you may be here to speak to that. And also to members of the public and the media that are here. You can follow the agenda and the debate on your computer, your tablets, or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. The Economic and Community Development Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations. The Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And in fact is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credits. So, members, moving right along, are there any declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for confirmation of the minutes of the April 13 meeting. Councillor Lai, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a very light agenda today, and we have just a couple of speakers on my list at the moment. And so we also have an additional piece of new business communication from the mayor, which I'd like to add as new business as at the end once we clear through the items that are here. So the first item, members, is EC 4.1, intention to designate Rogers Road Business Improvement Area. What say you? Councillor Grimes? You're moving it. Councillor Grimes moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is appointment to Business Improvement Area Board of Management, the Eglinton Way. There are two names there as part of the recommendation. Any questions? Councillor Grimes moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next item is EC 4.3, Toronto Economic Bulletin. Councillor Grimes moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is EC 4.4, Ontario Government proposed changes to the provincial healthcare system. Is there a presentation for that item? Yeah, got it from the Medical Officer of Health is coming. Okay, NOH. Okay. And then we have EC 4.5, engagement of not-for-profit organization to provide youth mentoring programs. We have speakers on that item, so we'll be holding that down. And then the final item is EC 4.6, the furniture bank expansion assistance. We'll be holding that item down. And then item for new business, there is a communication that has been sent by the mayor regarding, there are two items as part of the bulletin. It's the looking at our winter focus events and festivals and so on, as well as the Toronto Night Economy that we are asking, the mayor's asking staff to report back. So I'd like to add this item, I think you all have copies of this, to the agenda. All those in favor of adding the item? Opposed? That's carried. Members, did you wish to dispense of this now, or did you wish to have a discussion or talk about it? It's pretty clear what is being asked. And so the item, the recommendation, the directions to staff to bring back a report. And I don't know whether or not there's a date that we do, but the general manager will bring this back as quickly as possible. Do you need a specific date, Mr. Williams? Because we'd like to move this along. How much time do you think you need?
We've done a lot of work on this item, so probably either the last meeting before the summer break, or the first meeting.
September?
Yeah, depending upon what the schedule's like. So we could actually, we should do it before September because
Okay.
planning for the winter. So we'll do it
So then July?
July.
Okay, so this report will be brought back in July. Do you need a specific motion for that, Mr. Williams, or?
I'm fine to do an undertaking.
Members, so we don't need to give a specific date. Mr. Williams has indicated that he'll bring this back by July. Councillor Haynes, do you have a question on it?
Yeah, just have one question.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
So, Mr. Williams, so there's been some motions at council around the concept of a nightmare, which I remember was referred to you or your staff. Would that be part of this night economy review?
We have a separate process to report back on that, which will be approximately the same timing. So we'll take a look at whether to wrap it into one or to keep it with two reports, but we'll do it in the same timing.
Mr. Williams, I think it makes sense to wrap it into one report, quite frankly. So, okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so the matter is being sent to the general manager. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, members, we have three items, actually. The report from the medical officer of health, presentation, and then we have the 4.5, which is the engagement of a not-for-profit organization to provide youth mentoring program. And then 4.6, Councillor Grimes did ask if we could vary the agenda in order to bring the speaker on to deal with the furniture bank expansion assistance and so on. So 4.6. So with your approval, we're going to vary the agenda and to bring 4.6 instead of the other two items. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, great. So we're now on to item 4.6, the furniture bank expansion assistance. We have a speaker. I have a name, Dan Kershaw, who's here with us. Mr. Kershaw, would you come forward, please, sir? You have 5 minutes to present to committee. There is a time to your left here, sir, that you may want to watch. Members of committee may ask you questions after your presentation. Welcome. Good to see you. You have 5 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, committee. Furniture Bank, we're 21 years old. The City of Toronto helped us 21 years ago. You helped us get our first warehouse. Today, we've supported over 1,000 people who are coming out of social and affordable housing and receiving the furniture that actually turns housing into homes. As a charity, we do that every day, but what we've discovered over the last years, as the housing crisis as a whole continues to worsen, the requests for support from community agencies and shelters around the city continue to increase, coming to Furniture Bank. Now, as large as we are in Etobicoke in a 26,000 square foot space, we're only able to accommodate 4,000 families worth of support. But what I'm here to talk about is whether you would allow Furniture Bank to help save the city money. What we've discovered over the years is that when you keep millions of pounds of furniture out of landfill, the solid waste department does not have to send tractor trailers worth of quality furniture to Green Lane. In 2016, you passed a long-term waste strategy program, and what we are doing as a charity in our current facility is we're keeping over 3,000 cubic meters of furniture out of landfill and saving the City of Toronto significant costs of getting that furniture that would normally be disposed down to Green Lane and into landfill. The current waiting list of agencies that would like Furniture Bank support is over 200 agencies. That translates into 4 times the social impact that we deliver currently in 2018. It starts with more space. Furniture we all need has to be collected and distributed. We currently are collecting and distributing furniture within 72 hours from donor homes such as yourselves. We are matching them and working with community agencies and shelters for the families that they represent, allowing them to assemble a home and giving them the possibility of success having exited crisis. We've been working with York University's Waste Wiki to help quantify the cost savings to the City of Toronto when we're able to divert more furniture. As soon as it hits the side of a road, it's not quality, it's not safe. We cannot pass it on to community agencies and their families. We're trying to create the infrastructure and the resources so that in addition to more space, we have the resources to be able to support every community around the city and the agencies that reside in them. So when families are emerging out of crisis, when they're able to secure that very precious keys to an apartment that is so desperately expensive these days, they're able to receive $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 of donated furniture that our charity's been able to divert from homes, from businesses, to make sure that that doesn't end up in landfill and it ends up back into the community. We've been working with Shelter and Supports now for 13 years. The Streets to Homes program is Canada's first Housing First program. We're one of the last stops in that process, and we're supporting them actively and ever more. We're looking for added supports so that we can expand into Scarborough, into the north, and into any community that needs our supports, and at the same time divert ever more furniture, saving solid waste, the cost of processing that, which they normally would consider unprocessable, and send it down to Green Lane and incur those costs. So my hope is that the committee would recommend further analysis on both the cost savings of the environmental diversion, the environmental benefits that are aligned with the long-term waste strategy, and the social benefits of expanding beyond the single footprint that we have in Etobicoke to support up to 4 times the number of families per annum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kershaw. Question, visiting members of council? Seeing none? Okay. Councillor Grimes first, and then
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Chairman. Andrew, thanks for coming down. Thanks for the
Thank you, Mark.
presentation today. You're doing great work out in Etobicoke, and we want to see if we can help you to come out to Scarborough and wherever is needed. Could you maybe just, I've had the opportunity to tour a couple times the furniture bank. So I think you said 72 hours you pick up the furniture. People kind of want to get it off their front lawn or get out of their house.
Yes.
What problems are you experiencing with that? So with a 26,000 square foot facility, what are the logistic problems you're having with?
Sure. So our current location has 3 loading bays. Every day we have 10 trucks on the road. 5 are out collecting furniture from homes and businesses, bringing it back in. So there's a real cycle time. We really run a logistics operation where we're making sure quality donated items are coming off the truck onto a showroom floor, allowing those agency families to select the items for their home, and then turning right around and redistributing those items and delivering it back out into the community. So, you know, our current facility is really not designed for that flow through activity. So we're really capped at really supporting 20 families a day in our current configuration.
And they're lined up to come in. The families are usually, it's by appointment only, and their
Correct.
capacity every day for your appointments?
Correct. We're working with community shelters, agencies, social groups that are representing families that are coming out of some form of crisis. So it's not available to the general public. They're representing, so it's refugees, newcomers, women's shelters, formerly homeless, mental illness, Indigenous groups. It's really our, the A to Z of social issues we have here in the city. You can afford the housing, but you can't afford the furniture. We have a crisis that's occurring right now where children are using their clothes as mattresses, garbage bags for cupboards. It's something that we can't see because it's behind a closed door, but we see this every day and it's only worsening. Our hope is that with more corporate donations that we have to turn away large donations because we have no place to put it. There is no standing inventory in Etobicoke. And our ability to say yes to a large corporate donor, here are 500 sofas or here are 1,000 mattresses, is just not possible at this time.
Yeah. And our agencies, city agencies are calling you for help. So Toronto Community Housing is calling you. Like, could you name a few that are calling? Our city agencies are calling you?
We've had, over the last 3 years, first thing is we've put up a request, and I've got a list of over 300 agencies, Wood Green, Costi, Salvation Army. The list is long, many pages, and they all have families who are coming out of crisis, who do not have the financial resources. over the last 20 years, we've collected $50 million of furniture and provided it free of charge to families. So this is a situation where agencies may have one family at a time. They may have 100 a month that need these types of supports. We just started supporting CAMH last year, and they're referring families that are going back out of treatment. So it is really all community groups that can benefit from this.
So Andrew, your target market now, I think you're looking to go to Scarborough, is that correct?
Well, we've got a location on the west. There's, where we go to collect furniture is across the city. Where we go to support families is across the city. It is not a neighborhood-specific issue, but we're trying to load balance the distribution. So collection in the east can be distributed in the east, and that'll just help us to be more efficient in our operations.
So on your wish list right now is probably a large warehouse, 30,000
Large
square
warehouse,
feet, loading
yep.
dock facilities.
Loading docks and facilities, right now, 20,000 square feet would allow us to duplicate what we do here in Etobicoke. That could translate into double the environmental savings. So we estimate over $200,000 of landfill costs are diverted and avoided because of a furniture bank operating. We do simple math. If we can support 4 times the number of families, that means we can divert 4 times the amount of furniture and save the city 4 times the value of that landfill, which, according to the Waste Wiki and PhD students, can get it up into the millions depending on how you value the value of your Green Lane landfill space.
Great, thanks Andrew for coming down this morning, appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grimes. Councillor Carroll, God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
I'm a fan. I have actually sent furniture to the furniture bank, and
Wonderful.
some
Thank
of some estates that didn't sell everything in our Don Valley North area, things like that. I am going to be asking some questions of staff, though, and so it's fair to ask them of you first. You know, because you sort of have integration with some of the other agencies, that what you're asking, basically all of the food security agencies are asking for in all the parts of town. There are a number of agencies who would love us to give them access to free or low-cost space, but you're aware of our policies around, if it was us helping with space, the below-market rent policy, things like that. You have large corporate donors and they're offering goods, but is there a possibility that if we're looking at this and the report comes back speaking in the context of our policies around charity organizations, can we take some of those large corporate donors and say to them, you have to help us with the space piece?
And we are, thank you. We are trying to work with corporations. We actively are working with local junkers. Toronto has the largest, most thriving junk industry in North America. We have just make it go away. When we work with some of our junk company partners, they realize a lot of what they collect is good quality furniture, but they don't have an infrastructure in which they can sustain their business, but divert the goods back into the social stream. So we are looking at how do we do some cost sharing so that we can support that.
So they know that, that if another space was available, there are costs. People, when we
Yes,
talk
the
about
building
low
alone.
costs, we still have to cover costs.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So you're asking in the context of the policies that we have now.
Yes.
So if I were to move an amendment that the report come back in the context of the policies that we have for all charitable organizations that we partner with, you're okay with that?
I would, but I would like to highlight that when we at Furniture Bank look at the various departments that our charity touches and impacts,
Yeah.
we're more than just a social agency. When we currently work with the solid waste team, and they vigorously, traditionally people look at furniture as destined to the dump. It's not easily compressible, it's not easily recyclable, but it is very reusable if there's an infrastructure. So when you lay out the cost savings on the solid waste side and the social employment that we have embedded in the charity, plus the social outcomes, which most people know us for, it actually becomes a very good business case for expanded supports. It starts with space. We do have corporate groups and logistics partners who would, with space, would be very interested in getting involved. But at a minimum, we're certainly working within city policies, but it's really trying to find large spaces
Right.
is really a real hindrance for us to be able to make a significant impact on the community.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. We have a number of students who are visiting us this morning, and I'd like to welcome the students from Greystone College who are here to observe us this morning. It is a private vocational school established in 2002, and the students are learning about business, hospitality, tourism, interpretation, translation, and so on. I gather that based on what I have here is that they are locations in Vancouver, Toronto, and New Delhi. So welcome to the students from Greystone College. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, just a few questions. Mr. Kershaw, we're not finished. Oh, I'm sorry. May I ask you to come back, please, sir? I was just it's an interlude there, that's right. Just a few questions from me. And I know that we have used the Furniture Bank for some of our residents, so we've had an opportunity to visit and see how you operate. Tell me a little bit about, and you've talked a little bit about the fact that you are able to capture materials from going into our landfills and reuse them, and it's extremely important. But tell me a little bit about the people who work for the organization, please.
Yeah, so when Sister Anne founded the charity 21 years ago, she had a very embedded belief that people who were not getting the employment opportunities through the traditional job market. So we embedded in what we do today. We are a little over, I think we're 51 employees as of today. 2/3 of those employees have come through our social employment program, which is creating opportunities in the warehouse, on the trucks, in the call center, really giving them skills, soft skills, conflict training, emotional intelligence training, to really help them develop a broad set of skills so they can be successful beyond furniture banking in the general employment market. Many of those people have stayed with us and risen up. And our intent is as we grow, we're able to create more employment opportunities for those social categories as well.
Right, and can you walk me through, please, the process that's used in order for someone to either get in touch, qualified,
Sure.
in order to get the service that you offer?
So an example, I'll use CAMH recently. So when CAMH has a family or an individual that is prepared to go back into housing, they are making an appointment at Furniture Bank for an appointment. So we're very particular. It's when you get keys to an empty apartment and you don't have the financial resources to furnish it, that's when you're making an appointment. It's usually currently around a 2-week wait time. On that day, they will come, they will check in. Volunteers really run the core charity. They will take those families out onto a showroom floor and allow them to assemble a home from the donated goods we've got from the community. So we're only as good as what we get from the community, but generally when everything's working well, we can support about 20 families of need a day. Those families select what they want in 45 minutes, and the next day we deliver it to that family, and that family moves forward. So the cost for the actual furniture is, there is no charge, and we have, in KMH's case, they're paying for the delivery cost.
There's been much effort is underway in order to create opportunity in terms of more housing for the Torontonians, our citizens who are in need. Part of that is supportive housing, which is a central focus to what we're trying to do. How do you see the opportunity, or perhaps you can explain it to me, because I do see a synergy between the need for furniture, and it's not just furniture. You do dishes, plates,
Yes,
forks,
most of our
and
clients
knives, and
are,
things like
yes.
that. So you provide what's needed to outfit an apartment or home to individuals who are not able to do so because of financial means, right?
That's the core of it, yes.
So then, could you perhaps just explain how you would see this opportunity where we're trying to provide more housing for residents who are below the line, I'll use that particular expression. Can you maybe just expand on that?
Sure. However the different agencies are securing housing, and there are many ways, Our charity really looks at it from that lens of when you receive keys, however you get them, to a space, it tends to come empty. It does not have a mattress, it does not have dishes, it does not have small appliances, it does not have sofas. And that is all, what we're trying to do is build up the support so that we can continue to expand the agencies and the families that we're supporting. It's really a function of supply of donated goods that are coming in and agencies that we can rely on to represent the families that need those types of supports. So we're really prioritizing those in most critical need. And that's where I refer back to that waiting list of 200 plus agencies who have said, when you have capacity, we would love and need to refer our families that we're seeing every day because they're going into a situation where they've got housing, but they're going onto the streets, using milk crates, sleeping on floors. So for us, we see it as a tension that depending on the resources that we have available to us, our mission is to solve this particular social issue, which is linked to poverty and housing for any agency up the continuum of housing.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. There are no further questions of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, I know that there's questions of staff that's required. Is okay? Right. So at this point, we will take questions of staff. Visiting councillors first. Councillor Ainsley, no questions. I'll just bring this into committee now. Councillor Carroll to question staff.
Thank you. So I have already asked the deputant. We do have some policies around how we do proceed to assist charities when they go looking for space. Do we not?
Through the chair, yes, we do. There's a council-approved community space tenancies policy governs that work.
Right, so that's over and above just, hello, can I have a below-market rent space? There's a bit of help involved there. How can the organization set itself up for and be ready to use the possibility of below-market rent space?
Through the chair, in fact, council approved the policy to bring a transparent and fair approach. The city is often approached by different organizations looking for space. The policy provides for a transparent process to allocate space when it's available.
Okay, so when I saw this last night, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to word this to protect that policy, because I hear from organizations all the time, just give me space and we'll serve all the people you want us to serve. Just give it to us, and that's a dilemma for us. But if that policy is in place and council has adopted, I don't really need to reword this motion. You're pretty much policy bound to report back in that context. You would have to put that policy lens on it, would you not?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I can be supportive without amendment. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. There are no other questions of staff. Speakers, Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to apologize to Dan. I think I called him Andrew in the deputation, but Andrew is hiding over there too, so thanks, Dan. And on behalf of Dan, Andrew, I'm going to invite my colleagues to come out.
Sorry, Councillor Grimes, just to check. Is it
I have a
Dan Andrew, or is it just
No, it's Dan and Andrew. They're both over there.
You said Dan Andrew. I know you're having a
Dan and Andrew.
special day.
And I have a motion.
You have a
First
motion.
I have to move. That's
okay.
right. So,
Please move your motion.
yeah, you saw the motion I put, but I also add at the end, and any other aid or resource to assist the Furniture Bank in their charity work. They'll put up on the screen.
Okay.
And on behalf of Dan and Andrew, I'm sure they'd love to have you come out and visit the Furniture Bank to really see what the great work they're doing out there. And I've been out there a couple of times, but it's really something to see these families go through. And from like Councillor Thomas said, from plates to dishes to furniture, couches, tables. They're so excited. I saw a family leaving when I was coming in one day, and they were just so excited that they received all this to outfit their whole brand new apartment. I think they were Syrian refugees. So it was just to see their excitement and made it for me. But they have some challenges out there, and the parking authority, is their neighbor next door. I helped them get some trailers parked stage next door, but they have these donations coming in, and the logistics of their problem, I've seen it. It's hard to to imagine. But they're also being very creative. So you go there and the dressers are over here, the mattresses are over there, the couches are over here. But, you know, a piece of furniture may sit there for a week or two, but they have a paint shop where they bring local artists in and they paint them up and they put them back out on the floor, and they seem to go pretty quick right after that. So they are being very creative, but they are doing great work. And as Dan said, our agencies are calling them all the time for help. I think we should look at a way to assist them. And, you know, I just added that any other aid or resource to assist the Furniture Bank in their work that they're doing. So I invited them to come down and make sure that my colleagues heard the great work they're doing, and I do invite you to come out, and I'd even go out there with you if you'd like to do a tour. I know they'd love to see you. So with that, I ask you to support my motion and see how we can help this great organization.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Grimes. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Yeah, so I will be supporting the motion and don't need to make an amendment. I just want to be sure that we understand that we do have to look at it in the context of all of the agencies we support. And I think the Furniture Bank themselves know that. We are at a difficult point in time economically. Every food security organization, every organization that helps people equip homes, every refugee supporting organization, all of them could do 10 times more work if we just handed them free space. And so we're stuck having to say free space isn't a possibility because the lights have to be paid for, the heat has to be paid for, et cetera. And if we hand over free space but expect them to function, that becomes our bill. And so one of the biggest ways we can help them with, and one of the few places we're allowed to actually get involved and our presence and our names might help, is to help them to fundraise. Donations in kind are great, but at the end of the day, the Furniture Bank, any food bank, any put in the name charity and the bank beside it needs cash. Without some cash to go along with the in-kind, they struggle. Our grants can help because when they arrive, they're cash with action strings attached, but we need to help them in all of those ways, not just with space, but to how do they build the fundraising model that makes sure that that they can do all of the above. The zero waste piece of Furniture Bank makes it even more urgent for us because our long-term waste strategy is going to be a big piece of this term of office, but knowing that we need to help them most with the whole formula, not just the space, but how they would sustain it, is really what that community charity tenancy policy is all about, is not just helping them, but making sure that what we help them with results in a sustainable model so that they can go on serving is why I'm very happy that will be touched on in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lai to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dan and Andrew, for coming out and all the wonderful work that you've been doing. And I'm very happy, actually, to hear that it's coming to Scarborough, because that's where my ward is. But I think citywide, I think you're doing a great job. And I agree with Councillor Carroll about the fundraising part of things. I think if we can help, it will be very, very good. And I do have, in some of the communities that I serve in my area, there's a lot of, this is actually the first time I heard about being a new councillor. This is the first time I heard about that you guys have been doing this since 1998. It's a really wonderful job. And if there's anything I can help with my real estate background and, doing resources and sourcing out some of these good warehouses space, I'll be more than happy to help. And I'll be very, very happy, actually, to support the motion for the expansion of the Furniture Bank. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. And I, too, wanted just to add my voice to this request. In fact, it is a very important organization to those who are in need of assistance. It's important to the city. We've heard about the fact that the Furniture Bank helps us to reduce the materials that we would send to our landfills and so on. but I just wanted to provide an example as to the experience. I was contacted, my office was contacted by a family that had moved to the country, and they had been in some time. And the contact actually came through a combination of things, a father and a daughter. I actually met the father at an ESL event that I had attended, but the daughter had also contacted the office. And he was almost in tears when he spoke to me about the fact that they needed to have a bed, some dishes, just an end table to help them. And I ended up visiting the family at their apartment on Victoria Park. And it was sad that they were having such difficulties and so on. And we turned actually to the Furniture Bank, who were very helpful and had the willingness to assist, because this is sort of out of their normal process, because we couldn't have waited for the period of 2 weeks to create an appointment and so on, because the family were in desperate, dire needs, and the father, not being able to provide for his family, he was really sad. You can tell just by the way he spoke, and the tears actually that came down his eyes. And we were able to get two of my staff members to actually pick them up in Scarborough and to drive them to Etobicoke to see the selection of items that were available, and for them to select from those items what they needed and so on. The experience was a very positive one. We took the opportunity to help this resident who needed the help. And clearly there are more people across the city that needs the help and so on. And I understand the Furniture Bank's interest in expanding. The challenges for us, and I think Councillor Carroll pointed out some of them, but in addition, we are experiencing an all-time low with respect to commercial space in the city as a whole, and that's a problem. And so, given that, I just wanted to clearly point that out, that we can't necessarily assume that because this request has come forward that we're going to be able to help, but we're going to do our best through the staff process to see what can be done, because we know there's a need, there's a necessity, and so the work that's being done needs to expand across the city, because the residents in Scarborough and elsewhere in Midpoint, Midtown, there are residents in Midtown who need the service as well, need to have access, and that's a key. And it's difficult, as we've learned from Councillor Grimes, that the facility in Etobicoke has basically reached its apex. It can't grow anymore. And what do you do? So the next logical situation for an organization like this that's helping needy residents in the city is to look to see how they can expand. And part of the process is to see how they can partner with, whether or not it's the city or other organizations and so on, and or temporary facilities that might come available. So I'm delighted that we are being asked to address this particular matter, because it would have been very frustrating for you to have this on your own and without looking for help. And I'm happy that Councillor Grimes has brought this forward in an advocacy way. So thank you, and we hope that we are able to work with you to provide this service to residents. All right, members, we have essentially a motion from Councillor Grimes. I just wonder if staff could put that motion up, and then we could vote on the item. So the motion's there. I think you've had a chance to read it. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The item is dealt with. Okay, members, we are moving to EC 4.4, which is Ontario government proposed changes to the provincial healthcare system. I don't see the medical officer. Is she? Oh, there she is. Mrs. de Villiers is here. Okay, the medical officer's health is here. Thank you and welcome. This is your first opportunity at this meeting. Is he coming? morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to members of the committee. As you'll see in front of you, and I believe you're just getting a hard copy handed out right now of a presentation I'm going to walk you through. And as you can see on the slides in front of you, this presentation is entitled Ontario Budget 2019, Impacts on Toronto Public Health. So I am going to take you through the slides. So very high level, current status of public health in Ontario. At this point in time, public health is actually provided, local public health services are provided throughout the province of Ontario by 35 local public health units, of which one is Toronto Public Health. I'm not going to get into the details, but suffice it to say that there are currently 3 governance models in respect of the 35 existing local public health departments. And in Toronto, our particular model is what's characterized as a semi-autonomous model or a semi-autonomous Board of Health. We have a Board of Health that has independence in respect of policy, but reports through to Council in respect of budget and financial decisions. Regardless of the governance model, however, there are responsibilities and obligations to which all 35 local public health units are held, and that includes the Ontario Public Health Standards. There is existing provincial legislation called the Health Protection and Promotion Act, and there are about 40 other provincial acts that have some responsibility and duties required of the local boards of health. But actually what this really means at the fundamental level is that public health in the local sense has a significant role in terms of providing services that actually improve the health status of the population. And it does this work in concert with a series of partners, whether it's with the municipal partners, whether it's with other local healthcare providers and healthcare institutions. Much of what we do in terms of population health has to do with strong links to school boards, and certainly we have a significant role in terms of leveraging our relationships and collaborations with local agencies and partners. High-level summary with respect to the Board of Health. I've spoken about our semi-autonomous nature at the Board of Health. The City of Toronto, under the City of Toronto Act, or Council I should say, has a role in respect of ensuring the appointment of board members. They have a role in appointing the Medical Officer of Health. Clearly, as I discussed earlier, there's a financial and budgetary responsibility, and there's staff as well that has to be provided through to the Board of Health and to Toronto Public Health, so that we can discharge the responsibilities as I've described to you already. This slide takes you through the role of the Medical Officer of Health. If I have to summarize it very quickly, what I would suggest to you is that I see my role, and it is actually articulated in legislation as well. I see my role as being the people's doctor, the community's doctor. What we're trying to do fundamentally, and what I do in concert with the great staff at Toronto Public Health, is to ensure that we're acting as best as possible, using the best available science, the best available information, to ensure that we're able to improve the health status of Torontonians, to reduce disparities, and as well to make sure that we're ready and able to respond to outbreaks and emergencies that may threaten the health of our city. This infographic articulates those very roles that I've just described. And I think what's important for committee members to recognize is that when we're actually successful in terms of discharging our obligations on improving health status, reducing health inequities, and preparing for and responding to outbreaks and emergencies, what we effectively do is we contribute to a sustainable health care system and a health system writ large. This slide actually takes you through the Toronto Public Health mandate in a more verbal form, but effectively what I've just described in terms of improving health status, reducing disparities, and addressing public health threats really is what we're fundamentally about at Toronto Public Health. I think the other important role that we have, and the role that I have in particular as an obligation both to the Board of Health and to City Council, is that we try to make sure that you're equipped with the best available information so that we can successfully work together to address health issues that impact on the residents of our city. And I would tell you that this is a great investment. Public health actually is a well-documented excellent return on investment for the dollars that are invested. Looking at the top of the slide, we know that life expectancy has increased significantly in our city, and much of that increase in life expectancy, certainly over the last 100 years, has to do with public health interventions. And when you look at some specific examples, we know that for every $1 that's invested in immunizing children against mumps, measles, and rubella, you actually get a $16 savings in healthcare costs at the end of the day. And for each $1 invested in the prevention of tobacco use, you actually save $20 in healthcare costs in the future. These are fabulous returns on investment that are rarely seen, even in the world of clinical medicine, with all the advances that have been made in the last 100 years, whether we're talking about antibiotics, surgical procedures, medical interventions. They rarely come up to this level, up to this standard in terms of return on investment. The next couple of slides actually is just to give you a sense as to the breadth and range of service and programs that's provided by Toronto Public Health to the people of this city. And as you can see, there are also significant volumes attached to the service and programs and interventions that are delivered by Toronto Public Health. 800 publicly funded schools actually receive service from Toronto Public Health staff. We're talking about almost 350,000 students. Immunization programs in schools, screenings to ensure that people have the opportunity, to start off life healthy and stay that way for as long as possible. Inquiries to our lines. When we talk about communicable disease, and we know the significant impact that communicable disease has on our population, this city has lived through events like SARS, and we know of other incidents throughout Ontario when it comes to things like Walkerton. Communicable and infectious disease have significant impacts not only on health, but frankly on the physical health and mental health, but actually on the economic health and the social health of a community. And as you can see, there are a number of other services that are actively provided through Toronto Public Health. Turning now to the specifics of the provincial budget of this year, as you know, on April 11th, the provincial government handed down its budget, and the specific impacts that were articulated in that budget document on April 11th for public health are as explained on the slide. What was provided for was a notion that there would be some adjustment to provincial municipal cost sharing for public health funding. The document also indicated the plan to establish 10 regional public health entities rather than having the 35 local public health units. And as you'll see on this slide, it spoke also of 10 regional boards of health with a common governance model to be effected by 2020-2021. And finally, the document referred to annual savings of $200 million by 2021-2022, and these were proposed to occur through regionalization and governance changes to public health units as described. Subsequent to the budget document being released on April 11th, we've received some degree of confirmation, or further information might be the better way to put it, from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and from the province writ large. So what I can tell you is that the investment in local public health currently provided by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care is approximately about $750 million a year. So that we know. What further information we got after the budget document was handed down on April 11th is articulated on the bottom half of this slide. We were advised that specifically the plan for the province as they saw it was to change the cost-shared funding formula for Toronto specifically from its current level of 75% provincial, 25% municipal to 60-40 in 2019-2020, and that this included programs that were not only currently funded at a 75-25 level, but that cost-sharing ratio would change to 60-40, also for those programs that historically the province has funded 100%. The further information that was provided for the forward-looking years, 2020-2021, 60-40, again for all programs, including those programs that were traditionally 100% provincially funded. Finally, with 21 2022, moving that cost-shared funding formula to a 50-50 split, 50% provincial, 50% municipal. High-level summary based on the information that we have to date. Our calculations would suggest that the impact of the changes that are proposed thus far, as we understand them, is just under a $65 million reduction in provincial funding to Toronto Public Health. If we are to look at a 9-month fiscal year, given that these changes were described to take effect on April 1st, 2019, the proposed change to the funding formula would require an additional $25 million in the City of Toronto's contribution in order to maintain the existing Toronto Public Health budget. And as noted on this slide, this is our understanding of the situation to date. It's largely been communicated, verbally. We have just started to get a little bit of written confirmation, but again, not all the details are actually available to us at this stage. And I imagine that that may not come until we actually engage in some conversation on an ongoing basis. But we have this is the best estimate that we're able to provide given the current information that we have. So this is my final slide to the committee, and this is effectively what I provided to the Board of Health in terms of advice on how best to ensure that we are well positioned to do what we need to do to fulfill our obligations to the residents of this city, to ensure that we're best able to improve the health status of Torontonians, to reduce disparities in that health status, and to ensure that we're able to respond to outbreaks and emergencies and other emerging issues that actually threaten public health. And these principles, I think, are very important, and it's not just about financial investment. That certainly is one of them. But I think there are important points to be made in respect of the need for a singular public health entity to serve Toronto's needs. We know that in order to serve public health well, we have to have strong relationships with the municipal sector and community partners. And public health resources and services need to be reflected and organized in a way that actually specifically addresses local needs. At the end of the day, this all happens at the local level. So I'm going to leave those points there with you and not speak to them further. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions you or committee members may have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Davila. Questions? Okay, visiting members, seeing none. Councillor Carroll, you have the floor.
Hi. Sorry I had to step out there and had to be a grandmother for a minute. My questions are sort of accounting questions. I'm especially concerned looking at the phase of this. I remember when we went from, we had been at 50-50 before, back in the day. When we started to make our way, we phased our way to 75-25, and we're trying to build back up what was kind of a fallen infrastructure. When we were building it back up, there were a number of funds that we were asked to operate at 100% funding. Are there still a lot of those in the system? And are they jeopardized in the proposal?
So, through the chair, if I can, Councillor Carroll, are you asking about 100% municipally funded programs?
No, there were a number where I remember for a while there, in the initial years at 75-25, we were constantly being asked, would you please operate this program for us? But don't worry, it's zero cost, they'll be 100% provincially funded. Do we have any detail yet on what their plans are around those?
So through the chair, sorry, Councillor Carroll, I didn't understand your question. You're talking about 100% provincially funded programs.
Yeah.
So what we've been provided in terms of information from the province is that not only will the 75-25 funded programs move to 60-40, we've also been told that those programs that are currently 100% provincially funded will also be moving to the 60-40 model, 60% provincial, 40% municipal, effective April 1st, 2019.
Some of those were things as fundamental as the health authority layer on things for the visually impaired and the hearing impaired. Really basic things. And those were the 100% funded things where everyone understands them to be provincial healthcare types of costs. Can you just operate them because you're closer to the ground? So they're going to expect property tax to start to pick up things that are really fundamentally healthcare.
So this is what the provincial government has provided to us, and they did say that programs that have traditionally been funded 100% provincially will move to the cost-sharing model at 60/40.
So now, what did happen? What I recall, back when it was 50/50, and I walked in the door after a number of years of surviving at that. SARS had happened, the flu epidemic had happened, we had poor resources to deal with a massive heat wave and power outage where public health is so important. And so at that time, part of the problem was where a municipality couldn't come up to the 50, the province came down to say, we're just going to match whatever you do give. So it wasn't just a matter of cutting 25% and saying, you pick it up, city. If the city didn't pick it up, they just came down even further. And that's a danger here, isn't it? Because what they're saying is that's the ratio. We're going to fund to a ratio. So whatever the city is able to put in, we're not going to get a penny more from them because we can't make it.
So through the chair, Councillor Carroll, you're right that traditionally what has happened is that it is a cost-sharing arrangement, but it actually has to be matched, if I can put it that way.
Right.
Municipalities have to put forward their share, and then it is matched at that ratio, whether it's 75-25 as it has been traditionally, or now proposed as 60-40.
Right. So, and then finally in the third year, 50-50, so, which is easier math. That's why I'm going to go to that. So, it was almost 65 million was our contribution to the budget. So if we don't come up with another 65, they come down not 25%, but even further. If we don't come up with that suddenly materialized $65 million, which would be almost 3% property tax. If even you wanted to inappropriately fund a whole lot of healthcare with property tax. If we don't come up with that, they get to come down even further.
So Councillor Carroll,
Okay.
You're conceptually correct. The one issue that I should just point out is that we're talking about the funding specifically that comes from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. So there are other funding sources that are from the province that support Toronto Public Health, but the issues, the 60-40 split and the proposed changes are in respect of the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care dollars.
Okay. I had one more question, but well, it's simply that, the long-term care. I recently found out how it works by having to live it. Right now, we really rely on, the change to the LHIN makes us nervous as well, because in terms of placing people into our city-run homes, we really rely on the fact that right now the LHIN can afford to have someone doing evaluation and placement in every single hospital, and also a couple out in the city for people who are trying to find placement from their home. Is that now threatened by the change to centralizing the LHIN into one authority?
So through the chair, there is quite a bit of change and a transformation, if I can use the words of the province, happening in the health system. And many of these details have yet to be worked out. There is a new provincial agency that's been established. They've just appointed an interim CEO. And there is also an ongoing process right now to establish or to receive applications for Ontario health teams. It's quite a long and involved process, but suffice it to say that there is significant transformation happening in the health system. And I'm not sure that it is completely yet understood by anybody how this will effectively play out on the ground. There's much, I think, that has yet to be really understood as the details are just starting to emerge.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lai?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to understand it because I'm new to this. The public health, Toronto Public Health is, we do public health because of the City of Toronto Act. Is that correct?
So through the chair, no, we have obligations under the Health Protection and Promotion Act, which is a provincial piece of legislation.
And does other municipality have the same public health department like we do in Toronto?
So through the chair, there are 35 local public health units throughout the province, and there are different models. So some are independent boards of health that serve several different municipalities. Some are part and built into the municipality itself or part of a regional government, depending on what the circumstance is. And some are like ours, where we have a semi-autonomous board of health, independence in respect of policy, but with strong connections and obligations to City Council when it comes to budget and finance.
Yeah, and further to that question, we are having a cut with the formula. Would the other municipality will have the same cut as we do in Toronto from the province?
Through the chair, Councillor Lai, the province has advised that the funding, the cost-sharing adjustment is different. They've actually provided a different model for Toronto. So as you saw on the slides, for Toronto, the suggested move was from 75-25 to 60-40, then 60-40 in 2020, 2021, and then ultimately 50-50 by 2021-22. For other jurisdictions, they're proposing 70-30 for the first 2 years, and then for differential jurisdictions, depending on size, some will stay at that 60-40, 70-30, others will go to 60-40.
Did you ask the province why they're treating Toronto differently than the other municipalities?
Yes, we have.
And are you talking to them? I guess we are talking to them about this inequity of funding. And actually, I just don't quite get it. I think health and long-term care, doesn't it belong to the province? Does it not, for this kind of health and long-term care? I thought it's a provincial jurisdiction, isn't it?
So health care is absolutely a provincial jurisdiction. When it comes to actually public health and doing the kinds of things that improve the health status of the population and reduce disparities and the need to be able to respond to outbreaks and emergencies, much of that actually has to happen at the local level because it has to be informed by local circumstances. But there is a significant role for the province, as we've heard from other members of the committee.
And also, we are doing, the province is supposed to be doing the long-term care, and I think we're doing it, and because they are 100% funding us to do it. And I know, but what I'm saying is that does it mean that if they are not funding us anymore and we have to eat that 60% of our share, does that mean that we can actually dump it back to them and let them run it? And would there be a possibility like that?
So, through the chair, I suppose that would be the decision of the decision makers, but suffice it to say that the public health budget doesn't actually, long-term care is managed in a separate budget. That is not within the purview of Toronto Public Health.
I understand.
We do work with our partners in long-term care on infection prevention and control and outbreaks, but they have a separate budget, which is not under the purview of Toronto Public Health.
I think that, we should probably share the message to them. If 100% funded by them, it's going to be removed. I think maybe they should actually fund that. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
Clarify, long-term care isn't 100% funded by the province. It's closer to 80-20, but so far we haven't heard any news on changing the funding formula for long-term care homes. The province has announced that it does plan on expanding the number of long-term care beds across the province by 15,000, but how those are going to be allocated, we have not received any news on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Councillor Cressy?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, Dr. Davila. So just so that I understand, does Toronto Public Health, do you provide programs and services in every community and every ward in the city?
Through the chair, yes.
So how many student nutrition programs do we run? How many kids are served?
So roughly, it's over 200,000 children are served through student nutrition programs, and it's, if I've got the number, it's several hundred schools and communities that are actually served by student nutrition programs.
And are they in every ward in the city?
We cover every ward in the city, some more than others.
The daycare inspections that we do, the childcare inspections, are they done in every ward in this city?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. The long-term care, so what is the work that's done in long-term care? Is it the inspections around communicable diseases? What work does Toronto Public Health do within long-term care facilities?
So through the chair, within long-term care facilities, we do provide inspections in respect of their food services. They are food premises and they are subject to food premises regulations. We also work actively with them on a number of different programs, everything from influenza immunization. Again, they have a particular population that's vulnerable to the impacts of flu. Plus, we also work with them on infection prevention and control endeavors and with outbreak management, notably.
And when I was going through some of the programmatic analyst notes from the recent budget, I noticed on long-term care that we partner directly and work with organizations like the Yihong Community Center, Community and Wellness Foundation, Mongshong, and others. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Also, we provide a series of grants through the Toronto Urban Health Fund. What types of organizations receive those grants?
So through the chair, it's a number of community agencies working to serve some of the most vulnerable communities that have very particular needs. And we're looking at things like youth resilience, funding that's specifically targeted towards AIDS and HIV prevention, funding that's targeted towards specific communities that actually generally have challenges getting access to funding without the existence of the Toronto Urban Health Fund.
Okay. And is it, if the reduction as it's retroactively being proposed goes ahead, are you able to continue to run all of the programs and services from student nutrition to long-term care inspections to vaccination prevention if those funding cuts proceed?
Through the chair, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Dr. Davila, I know it's your first time here, but this is bad news that you're bringing us the first time. And I'm not blaming you for that at all, but I will say that we will go uphill from here. So have you done the sort of, I guess, ward by ward impact at this particular point in time? Or are you looking at doing that as an assessment? And I gather ward by ward impact, but also there's a provincial the provincial wards as well, provincial boundaries and federal boundaries that are also impacted as well. Has that work been done? And I ask you this question in light because of the fact that it appears this is going to be a full court press in terms of responding back to the province, where I imagine that provincial MPs are going to be affected, whether or not they're Liberal, Conservatives, or NDP, just as we as councillors are impacted. I'm just wondering if you've done any of the impact work yet, or is it ongoing at the moment?
Short answer, yes, we're doing the work, and yes, it's ongoing. As details emerge,
Yes.
it becomes easier to further characterize the ward-by-ward impact. But yes, based on the information we have to date, that is being compiled, and it will continue to be compiled and further refined as more details emerge.
Because it appears to me that we sort of juxtapose between two particular principal consideration. One is healthcare, to provide the opportunity to help our residents, and they are the residents of the premiers as well, and the provincial government. At the same time, from the provincial government perspective, it's about dollars and cents, trying to balance budget based on their principal goals and objective, but it actually has a far-reaching impact, and that impact may not have been fully flushed out. So the work that you're doing, and I gather the other municipalities are also doing similar work then, will be to bring forward information to help them to understand the danger of this decision. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in fact, the way we're characterizing this and what I've been out there articulating is that one way to look at these things, the monies that go into public health, is to characterize them as expenditures. But in fact, I think the more apt characterization is to look at them as investments.
Right.
These are investments in community. And as I've also articulated quite publicly, one of the major challenges we face in the public health sector is that our work is upstream and it is focused on prevention. What we seek to do is to actually prevent illness and disease from occurring, and if we can't prevent it, we seek to at least delay it from occurring. And the challenge with prevention, of course, is that when it works, it looks like nothing is happening.
Right. Yeah, and I was going to touch on that, but I think you've just captured it fully, because at the end of the day, the cost to any government could be much greater in the long term if, in fact, you don't have these measures in place addressing short-term needs and addressing a more healthy environment for people to not only in terms of where they live, but how they conduct themselves in terms of activities that would create conditions where you would have worsened health effects. And so this is preventative, but it also requires resources to allow us to act.
Right, so if I can go back to, the old adage, it's that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You still need the ounce.
Right.
Right? There still has to be an investment.
Yes.
Right? You need the ounce, but you get the pound of cure. And if I can, Mr. Chair, you talked about long-term benefits. So sometimes the benefits don't occur until much later. But in certain circumstances, when it comes to the kind of prevention work that we do in the realm of public health, you don't have to wait that long for those benefits to be realized.
Yeah.
It's quite variable. So I think that we have to look at what's actually happening in our communities, think about the value of prevention, and recognize that when prevention works well, people are healthy,
Right.
they're happy, they're thriving, they're safe. It looks like nothing's happening because there's no disease, there's no illness, there's no outbreak. But as I've said before, that may look like a nothing, but it's an incredibly valuable nothing.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are no further questions? Okay, good. To speak? Councillor Cressy to speak first.
Thank you, and I'll move the recommendations in front of us. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Davila and her team. This has been an exceptionally busy and trying period these last 10 days. And I say these last 10 days because on the Thursday afternoon before the Easter and Passover long weekend, without any notice and without any consultation and without any warning, we were informed, actually, we were invited at 1 o'clock to a conference call at 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, when we were informed of a retroactive cut to our budget and every budget affecting every community in the province of Ontario. And Toronto was singled out for worse treatment without any rationale. And I think as Dr. Davila has just very meticulously articulated, every community in our city is impacted by these cuts. Toronto Public Health is not some nebulous unit sitting off in the corner talking to each other. In fact, they are proactively and publicly engaged with every one of our residents every day. 212,000 kids every single day in our city have a healthy breakfast because of Toronto Public Health. 212,000 kids in more than 600 schools. Communicable disease prevention, vaccines, 50,000 doses every year of vaccines in our schools, inspections of daycare facilities, inspections of long-term care facilities, partnerships with organizations like Mongshan and Yihang. Toronto Public Health, it keeps Torontonians healthy today, and critically, it keeps them healthy tomorrow. When it works, there aren't any headlines. You've never seen a headline in the newspaper that says, child doesn't get meningitis. Rather, you see the headlines, child does get meningitis. We prevent that. And so there is a cost to the healthcare system when you stop prevention. For every dollar you spend on tobacco prevention, you save $20 in healthcare costs. For every dollar you spend on vaccines, you save $16 in healthcare costs. This is why after SARS and after Walkerton, we changed the way in which Toronto Public Health and all public health units were funded. Because when you invest in public health, you end hallway healthcare. It's ironic, actually, because for a provincial government that claims to aspire to end hallway healthcare, by cutting public health, you're about to make it a whole lot worse. And so in the 10 days since this late last-minute announcement was made, we have seen a growing controversy and an overwhelming response from all sectors. The Ontario Medical Association of Doctors, not an association often to come out publicly on issues, has stated very clearly that they oppose this. The two school boards the Toronto Catholic and Toronto District have unanimously approved motions to oppose these cuts. They are sending letters home to every single parent telling them why these cuts will hurt their children. The Toronto Catholic letter goes out tomorrow. We've heard from boards of health across the province and cities like the City of Ottawa and City of Kingston opposed to this. And I think really importantly, we've heard very strongly from our budget chief, Councillor Crawford, and our mayor, John Tory, speaking out against this. And so Torontonians are waking up to the impacts. I thought Deputy Mayor Thompson's questions on the ward-by-ward breakdown are incredibly important because people don't realize what's at stake when you cut the provision of preventative health care. And MPPs and councillors are about to learn the full ramifications of this. I will just close by saying that it is incumbent on every single one of us to seek to reverse these cuts. This isn't a matter of phasing them in differently, because we're not phasing in the pre-SARS and pre-Walkerton model. In fact, we're learning from SARS and Walkerton to ensure we don't go backwards to that model. And I think with our deputy mayor, our budget chief, and our mayor's leadership, we're going to make sure that these cuts are reversed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. And we just want to take a quick look at the motion there that you are moving, which is to receive. Right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Cressy has done sort of the macro overview, and I've never sat on the public health board, but my interface with it was through one of the tiniest of grants, and before it became part of an umbrella grant, the Toronto Urban Health Grants, I sat for many years on the AIDS Prevention Grant Allocation Committee. And that, I think, is a perfect little story of how healthcare things can evolve from a municipality being responsive. That's why they partner with us, because we're on the ground and we can be responsive. At the point in time of the HIV outbreak, the healthcare system had to deal with people in the immediate, people with the virus, people dying, and they knew prevention was going to be a big part of it, but they actually just didn't have the wherewithal in the middle of the crisis to be dealing with prevention. This city did. This municipality became the first municipality in the world to respond to the AIDS crisis by specializing in the prevention piece. And we use property tax to do it. There is a role in terms of responding for property tax at the start. But what's important to note is that while we carried it along and allowed the community organizations all over the city, from places in Rexdale, Agincourt Community Services Association, Somali community out in Rexdale, all of those are community service organizations that we'll hear about here in some of the other services that they provide in the areas, but they also access health grants to do that. And that started out as a municipal program, and we carried it until the healthcare system was able to say, that's our role. We're the preventative healthcare organization, but you guys run it better. We know that you're on the ground speaking daily with the peers in that service, and so you should continue to allocate it, but we're going to start to fund it to the point of 75%, and just in time, because we had at that point a mayor who thought we shouldn't be in that business at all, whose last name was also Ford. And so the province said, we're going to pick up that expense to the tune of 75%. You'll pay for it 25%, but you'll also have that local community control over where it's going. That allows you, as the doctor has just said, as Dr. Davila said, to the point where it is so effective that it looks like nothing's happening. But this was the #2 city in the world of the outbreak, New York City first, and this, we had to act, and we were able to act the quickest, but it is a healthcare role now. And health and wealth are things that ought to be carried by income tax. There's no question about it. Property tax was not designed to redistribute wealth, and to deliver a publicly funded healthcare system. It can partner, it can fortify, and it can be the first responder. But we can't run the long-term healthcare system. We can't run the infectious diseases program. That's property tax is a picket fence tax, not designed to do that. The value of your house should not be tied to the public, how we're going to deliver the public healthcare system. And so this is, you know, whether we look at some of our long history of micro examples where we were groundbreakers and outliers in responding to things, to how we develop a healthy partnership and a trust with the Minister of Health and the Minister of Preventative Health that we've had for decades and decades under multiple parties. But right now it looks like nothing's happening. I do not want to go back to 2003 and live another SARS outbreak. No one wants to go back there, but there is no question that when you do that 50-50 share and it keeps being driven down and down and down, that is most assuredly where you end up. It's not alarmist to say that, because we were struggling with almost no infrastructure to respond to that. It was a miracle that Dr. Baswer was able to deal with that the way she dealt with it, because she really didn't have the infrastructure to do so, and we just pulled off a miracle that could have been a global crisis. But if we want to go back there, the ward-by-ward list, or shall we say riding-by-riding list, ought to be a wake-up call to these folks of what will happen in their own backyard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lai to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a member of the Board of Health, I really wanted to express my deepest thanks to our chair, Councillor Cressy, and Dr. Eileen de Villa for working so hard and fight for us in the last 10 days or so, a little bit more than 10 days. And I think everybody here makes very good points. And I really wanted to reiterate a few points that we've made here, just so that everybody, and I don't think they're going to give us back all of we have, but I think, you know, just in terms of negotiation, I think we should go back to them and tell them that, like Councillor Thompson said, that our residents are the premier's residents as well. So basically, you know, these are all good selling points that I think we go back to. And Councillor Cressy alluded to a few very, very good points about the irony of things, about the hallway medicine, and we have a province premier that cares so much about hallway medicine and all that kind of thing. And I think those are the things that we should actually go back to them and build and continue to build a healthy relationship, because, you know, it's all about trust and all that, and we need to have a healthy relationship with the province in order that we can get to where we have. But on the other hand, because what they are losing, they have to fill such a deficit, and they're so much in debt. I think we need to put ourselves in their shoes as well, that they need to, just like running our house or running our business, if there's no money coming in, we need to cut somewhere. So I think we need to just draw a balance, and I know that Dr. de Villa and your team needs to do a good job, and actually to try to, going forward, trying to negotiate what's the best for the funding for our city. So I really wanted to just say that this is a very, very good PowerPoint that we have here, all the breakdowns, and really helped myself to understand the whole impact about the budget that came down to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. And I too just wanted to add my voice to this. This is an extremely important matter. I want to thank certainly Dr. de Villa for coming and presenting to us, because it's very clear that prevention is extremely important, and there's been a lot of really good work that's been done by Toronto Public Health, and in fact, they're a model to the world in terms of, Councillor Carroll mentioned SARS and the challenges we've had and other challenges we've had and how we've risen to the occasion. I have no doubt that with respect to this particular challenge, we will all rise to the occasion in support of the chair of the Board of Health and Dr. de Villa and all of the people who are working in this sector, because this is provincial-wide. It's just a big issue. And every single person, politician and others, are going to be impacted by this. The work that's been done by public health and bringing awareness to many issues, and I think, you know, it's interesting, oftentimes when things work, you don't really see how they work. You have a tendency to think, well, on a piece of paper, I can just play with numbers. I can reduce the budget because, quite frankly, it's not really needed. But that's not really evidence. That's not factual. And what needs to be done is that we need to respond from an evidentially basis to provide the facts to all of the decision makers at Queen's Park, as well as to our residents, to let them understand the gravity of this particular decision. I have no doubt that the province is looking at how it balances budget and so on, and it's a difficult situation for all governments, all people. People are balancing their household budgets and everything, and all of the things that you're required to acquire, and you have to make decisions, prioritizing and so on. This is an important health issue. It's a social issue. It's an issue that will have vast impact overall to our community and our society as a whole. In fact, I would dare say that long term, it may end up costing us a lot more than we think that we're actually going to save by this particular decision and so on. I also think it's important for certainly the province to talk to us. We're partners. Partners talk to each other. And I understand decisions are being made based on their goals and objectives and their principles. But I think we need to kind of take a step back, because at the end of the day, we're trying to deliver service to the population that is accountable, and that politicians and the Premier and others are accountable to. So I think we really need to talk and dialogue. I'm becoming afraid of Fridays now. I used to love Fridays. I used to love Fridays. I'm becoming, literally, because Friday at about 12 o'clock, 12:15, 12:30, I'm kind of tuning into the radio or the TV to figure out what's coming, what's coming, is there anything coming? I'm really starting to think that not liking Fridays. And I used to really love Fridays because it's the weekend. Although we work through the weekend, it was still an opportunity for us to enjoy. So I'm hopeful that the Premier and others will listen to what's going to come from us, because we're going to build our case and bring information forward. The Mayor is going to be articulating. We all have a voice and so on. I mean, I have great faith in the Premier in that he is a kind of guy that listens. And I've worked with him here. We've all worked with him for the most part. Spent a lot of time with him and his brother here when his brother was the mayor. And I know that he cares. And so sometimes what happens is oftentimes you have a blank sheet and you want to work with numbers, and the numbers are a priority and so on. But we tend to not realize or not sort of focus on the actual impact of the decisions. It happens a lot when we make decisions that are just purely based on finance. Financial decisions, oftentimes without appropriate information of facts, tends to get clouded in the reality, right? So I want to cut $10, but what is the $10 impact? It's $1,000 over here, but we don't look at that because my objective is to cut $10. So we need to have that fact, and I think that is what's going to happen with the information that's going to come forward. I do believe that the Ontario government will review this, and I think that they will make the right decision. No one is saying for the moment that there can't be collaboration, can't be discussion about reviewing the formulation and so on. It is just how it's being done and the in-year process that we've already established budgets, and now we're going to have to come up with resources that is not available in order to deliver on the services that are needed to ensure that we have, you know, a very healthy environment and protecting our citizens. So I'm on board to responding and hoping that others will listen. And I do think that the Premier and others at Queen's Park will listen. So Councillor Cressy has the motion, which is to receive the information. Again, thank Dr. DeVilla for being here and others and so on. And we look forward to supporting your work going forward. Thank you. All right, the motion, just on the screen. And motion to receive. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, members, we have one item left moving forward, and that is EC 4.5. It's a communication from Councillor Ainsley and engagement of not-for-profit organizations to provide youth mentoring programs. We have one speaker, and we have with us today Leanne Nicole, who is the CEO, present CEO of, I'm hoping I'm not putting additional titles on it, but CEOs of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Toronto. I think this is your first time being here at this committee, so I'd like to invite you forward. And I think many of us know the great work that Big Brothers and Big Sisters do in the City of Toronto, and I know that your leadership has been exemplary. The mayor and I were at a bowling event that you had a few weeks ago and so on. We learned a little bit more about what you do and how you do it, and looking forward to hear your remarks this morning. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson and other council members. I appreciate being here. It feels like it's timely, speaking about prevention. The work that we do at Big Brothers Big Sisters is a preventative intervention for young people in Toronto. Currently, we are building thriving communities by empowering lives through mentorship. And I'll refer to the document that has been forwarded to you that looks like this. Starting at the right side, I'd like to share with you how we are an evidence-based intervention for young people to ensure that they reach their full potential. One of the biggest things that I learned being the President and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters is that the Children's Aid Society of Canada did a research study on young people in care across the country, and they came up with only one common denominator for every child registered in the system in this country, and it applies to Toronto, obviously, and it's the absence of a positive adult in their life. And that's exactly what we do, is we place young people with a positive adult in their life. The young people that we serve face enormous adversities, and I'll refer to our criteria called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. The young people who come into our intervention have a minimum of 4 adverse childhood experiences in their life. Adverse childhood experiences causes enormous toxic stress, which can continue to lead to not only a malfunction, or not a malfunction, but the neurological pathways in the adolescent brain are not formed in a positive way, but also it can lead to physical ailments in long-term studies on the adolescent brain. The way we do it is that we have a proprietary formulation on child protection to make sure our young people, that's in the center, is that we recruit volunteers intentionally. We have an enormous screening process. We train and monitor these volunteers on what we call the developmental assets and the developmental relationship in order to make sure that our volunteers are properly trained to make sure they're a positive influence in the life of children. We make sure that they express care, that they challenge growth, provide support for their mentee, they share power, and they also expand possibilities. We also work with the family, so a parent guardian who comes into our intervention courageously and says, I need help. We're working with those oftentimes single moms who come in, and we help them also on a family asset, and it's in your package. You can see how we do that too. So we surround the child by 3 positive adults: the big, who is the mentor, the parent guardian, and building up the assets of the parent guardian, but also our social worker. All of our social workers carry a caseload of approximately 80 cases, and so making sure that those 3 positive adults are in that child's life, we know creates a new normal for the child that is incredibly positive. We work with the Search Institute on the 40 developmental asset framework. What we know is that wealth gap is not the only gap in these child's lives. In fact, the most important gap is in developmental assets, and they're also in your package. You can see there are 40 developmental assets in which children need to have exposure to in order to thrive. The young people who are coming into our intervention are self-identifying that they have been exposed to between 10 and 12 assets out of the 40, and that's just not enough to be able to improve their executive functioning, have them engage in school, motivated to learn, etc. Boston Consulting did a social return on investment study of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we deliver back $23 for every dollar invested in our intervention. Why? Because our kids graduate from high school, they move on to post-secondary, they're ready to work, they're ready to learn, and their physical and mental health is incredibly strong comparatively to those that don't have a positive adult in their life. So when we're delivering back $23 for every dollar invested in our intervention, you can tell that those long-term often safety precautions for these children and the social capital that they have. You can see our thriving indicators that are there. Very important. What I always say is let's take the gun out of the 16-year-old's hand and dial back the clock to the time when they're between 7 and 11 and give them the assets not to choose the gun or not to choose the substance. I grew up at Kingston Galloway in a priority neighborhood, and I can tell you the community was violent then, and it's violent now. It can be violent now. And so what was different about me? I was able to make better decisions because I had someone who believed in me.
Very much. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Aidslie.
Ms. Nicole, thanks for coming in this morning. So the recommendations that I'm asking for from city staff, one of them is to focus on youth between the ages of 7 and 11, because a lot of the people I've talked to in the priority neighborhoods that I represent, 7 to 11 seems to be that area where you really need to catch kids as they're moving into their teenage years. You need to build that basis. Would that be an appropriate age
Yes.
range?
What our studies and research have shown is that the earlier, obviously, we get to the child, the better, but between 7 and 11 is pre-adolescent brain development. So if we can land the assets between ages of 7 and 11, the neurological pathways from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, they have a stronger emotional capacity to make better decisions. So we believe that investing between 7 and 11 is the ideal time so they make better decisions. We know our young people are being indoctrinated into gangs and violent life as early as 11, and the girl child right now is facing a trafficking problem. They also make decisions around 11, so we want to make sure that we get to them with a positive adult in order to make sure they have the assets to make better decisions before they're confronted by the trafficker or the gang member.
Okay, and in this you list 40 assets that
Yep.
you said that a child needs to be exposed to.
Yep.
And you said the average child down without a mentor is exposed to about 10 assets?
The ones coming into our intervention have been exposed to between 10 and, they're self-identifying as being exposed to between 10 and 12 assets. Less than 40% of our young people who come into our intervention are exposed to creative activities. Less than 48% have been exposed to recreation and sport activities, and less than 44% say that they're valued by adults in their community. So they're sharing with us that they do not feel like they have social capital in their community. And how that translates is if a child's in trouble, they don't have a door to knock on of an adult that isn't their parent or guardian.
Okay, and as somebody, I represent 5 of the 31 neighborhood improvement areas.
Yeah.
One of the stats that I saw was that 30% of youth under the age of 19 don't have any exposure to any adult mentoring at all. So Big Brothers and Big Sisters, through the training that you do and the outreach, would really fill that void.
100%. And what I can tell you is that our wait list number right now in the city of Toronto is 583 children. We cannot serve those kids. So we have to actually triage based on need. We have identified that the most important thing that we can do is go into the priority neighborhoods. And so we are decentralizing our service into priority neighborhoods. And Scarborough is a big focus because we have over 111 kids on our wait list. It's disproportionate in Scarborough. So we have decentralized into Scarborough.
Sorry, you've got 500 kids on the wait list?
583, of which 111 are from Scarborough.
Are from Scarborough, okay.
And that 76 of those are boys.
Sorry, are...
76 are boys.
Okay, 76 are boys. And so within the City of Toronto, a lot of the work that we do around youth mentoring, we have a youth equity table. We have the Toronto Child and Family Network Steering Committee. Is your organization involved with those?
We are sitting on as many tables as we're invited to. So we have had less of a presence, I would say, at those tables in previous years. But as we are ready and willing to come in and be part part of the advisement of those, because what I have seen with other mentoring programs, not to discredit them in any way, but they aren't evidence-based. It's very hard to be an evidence-based intervention when you're upstream in prevention, because you're not reading about littles in the newspaper. You're not reading about our kids in the newspaper. But we've developed a methodology to gather evidence that I believe can help other mentoring organizations also.
Okay, and so I assume you've seen the report or the recommendations because you're here today.
Yes.
For somebody like an organization like Big Brothers Big Sisters, where do you see yourself? So you're at the youth equity table, the steering committee table. Would you see your organization or an organization like yours moving forward from here? Do you think these recommendations are a good path forward? Or?
I do, because it does it does put forth the evidence-based nature of what an investment would look like in a mentoring program. So I absolutely agree. And I think that we've been around for 105 years. We've done this well for 105 years. Child protection is at the core of everything that we do. And so if there's going to be a lead agency on a mentorship initiative, it should be ours.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Very much, Councillor Ainsley. Councillor Carroll.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the deputy got part of the way to answer my question, because there is a disproportionate need. So doing the pilot here makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, if we're going to get a report first, but if we do the pilot, do we help you in two ways? First of all, we know we need a focus here because there's a disproportionate need, so we want you to do placements here. Does the attention around us conducting a pilot and letting it be known that we're looking for a mentor, does that help you to get more candidates to whittle away at your waiting list?
Yes, absolutely. So we are intentionally recruiting out of Scarborough currently, and historically our volunteer bases come from the Yonge Street corridor, and our beneficiaries are on the outskirts.
Oh,
so there's a mismatch,
interesting.
actually.
Yes.
And so what we're doing is going right into community with Councillor Ainsley's community, Councillor Thompson's community, and intentionally recruiting bigs out of those
Getting the
communities.
Big Brothers.
Because
Yeah.
of course proximity is so important. And so it's a completely different approach than we've had in the past, especially on the volunteer recruitment. City of Toronto, under public health, did have a mentorship program that unfortunately closed in June. But I believe that city employees are a great hotbed for us because they are in those communities anyway. So we also have an early retiree program called the Big G, or the Big Grandparent, where we take early retirees, young older adults, into the school and do intentional mentorship in school, because 11% of our kids that we serve are in care. It's very difficult to do an evening and weekend program. So to combat that, we've gone into the school directly. Eastview is a very high needs school in the morning, and we're bringing social workers, but also, or trained social workers, but also Big Gs or Big Grandparents from Guildwood to come in and focus on these kids and give 1 hour of mentorship.
Excellent. So that recruiting is already going on. So if we get this report in a couple of months' time, you're hoping to have
Scale.
more scale to deal with this.
Yes.
If you end up in that report.
Exactly.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lai to question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming out to explain to me, actually, personally, about Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Toronto. Where are you based in? Which part of Toronto are you?
So our office is at Yonge and Eglinton, but we serve 0 kids in a 2-kilometer radius of Yonge and Eglinton. So that is just where what I would say our administration is. But we are now decentralized into service. So we're hanging our shingle at East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club, at the Scarborough Hub, at Rexdale Albion, because we don't really need bricks and mortar that can't be accommodated by partnership through Boys and Girls Club, the library, the Y, other facilities. We need an office with a door in order for privacy purposes. But we're working with our community partners to put our shingle in their buildings so we can have complementary services.
Can you mention a few community partners that you're working with to date?
Yes. So Boys and Girls Club throughout the city. Also, we are opening talks with the libraries, Toronto Public Libraries, the YMCA, and so and the Scarborough Hub would be I would say, and Scarborough Storefront, which are our 5, I would say, our biggest partners right now.
Any community centers like immigration community centers and
We haven't got there yet, but it's certainly with our intention because we do want to partner for collective impact, and what we don't want to do is be redundant. We want to be something that's value added to these children's lives. We're not a rec provider, but kids, our beneficiaries participate in rec programming, so we meet them there. So that's part of our strategy moving forward, is to develop more community partnerships.
I assume that you are a social agency, or are you a nonprofit organization?
We are a charity. Every single dollar we raise is through fundraising.
Okay. And within the 111 kids that you said is in Scarborough, because my ward is in Scarborough.
Yes.
And do you encounter any of these kids that has English as a second language?
Yes, we have, we unfortunately had to close it, but we have a group program for new Canadians called our Newcomer Group Programming. Unfortunately, we lost funding on it, so we had to stop it, but we do have something on the shelf ready to go directly into community to do group mentorship, which is basically life skills, but life skills for the context of new Canadians, and the mentors are new Canadians themselves. They have landed in Canada over the last 5 years. It's a brilliant program, but unfortunately funding cuts, we had to stop the program right now, but it's ready to roll out anywhere as soon as we have funding.
Okay, so since when, what was this New Canadian programs closed?
We closed it in September of last year, so we did not do the 2019-20. It was going for 4 years.
So it went for 4 years, but it was short of funding that you had to close it. And do you have many demands on those new Canadians that don't speak the English language?
Sorry,
Do you have any demand?
Oh, very, very high demand, because what it does is shows them life skills in Canada. And we also have a post-secondary readiness program, and most of the post-secondary readiness program are new Canadians trying to navigate readiness for post-secondary. So it happens at University of Toronto Scarborough, Humber, Seneca, George Brown College, and York University.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. And just a few questions for me, please. The communication from Councillor Ainsley is engage nonprofit organizations to provide youth mentoring program. Big Brothers and Big Sisters is capable of doing that.
Yes.
And you've been doing that for some time.
105 years.
Right, exactly. That's a long, that is some time. So help us to unpack and help us to understand, and you've given us an overview, but to retain your organization's services, to build on the models that you have built on over 105 years, to bring in measures because you have those matrix already in place, those are already set. And so to engage your organization would be not only timely for us, but also you have structure, you have a proven track record and so on.
Yes.
You're out in the field already. This would be a winning situation to help us to fast track or accelerate our needs to respond to very serious matters that are taking place in the community. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. Our littles identify that they have been approached by gang members, that they have been engaged in violence and then been able to reform, that they have engaged in substance abuse, they have engaged in what I would call maladaptive coping strategies, and as soon as they're matched with their big, over the course of time, they make better choices and they make different choices. So yes, absolutely. More kids with more adults and more with more positive adults in their life will deliver more positive outcomes. That has been proven by people much smarter than me. So I think that, you know, the more that we can put positive adults in the lives of these vulnerable children, the better. And I would say even more importantly, that's delivering back to us now that we're gathering evidence on who I call mom, but parent guardian, is that they are happier, their mental health is better, they actually feel some respite because they're trying to do everything as a single parent, and so that is an added benefit. And in fact, we have now spoken to moms in focus groups saying that my child was headed to Children's Aid. My family was headed to Children's Aid, And because of our big, we were able to strengthen our own relationship. We have young people who are transitioning gender, who are new Canadians, who are Indigenous. We serve 79 unique cultures. So we're not just talking about Black youth, we're talking about Black youth and all the subcultures that go under that.
We're talking about our population.
Yes,
Of young people that are
100%.
in need, because oftentimes, and I'm really happy that you mentioned this notion of talking about Black youth, because really it isn't just Black youth.
No.
There's a lot of young kids that are in need of service and mentoring in our society, and that's what you're doing.
100%,
Right.
79 unique cultures.
So it seems to me perfect storm has arrived. You're from Scarborough.
Yes, I am,
Say
proudly.
You're from the neighborhood where Councillor Ainsley obviously is the councillor and so on, but you understand the dynamics of that neighborhood.
Yep.
Specifically, we're talking about Galloway.
Yep.
But it's not the only area that we're talking about. I want to make sure that I'm very clear.
Yes.
We're not emphasizing on just one specific area. There are two of the numbers of the NIAs are in my ward. Councillor Ainsley has indicated that he has 5. But you have a unique understanding of this issue.
Yep.
And then you're in a unique position with respect to the organization that you are the president and CEO of. And there's a unique opportunity now with respect to working with the City of Toronto.
Yes.
And you have, again, I'm going to use the term unique again. Fridays I'm fearful of, unique I like. Unique in the sense that you have already a built-in infrastructure foundation that actually could help us.
Yes.
And so you've had some discussions with our city staff?
Yes, I have.
Right. And you believe that in terms of, although we talk about these unique things, you can help us to be able to accelerate, to respond to a need which relates to the letter and the request from Councillor Ainsley to accelerate this in order to really get our hands into the mix of trying to correct some of the challenges that we're having with respect to this category of young people 7 to 11.
I agree with that, and it's unique, but
Yes.
what I know to be true is that if we invest in these kids between 7 and 11, it will create systemic change. Because, like I said, that community we had violence in that community then, we have violence in that community now. So what are we doing differently? And investing in these children with positive adults who are there to defend their potential. These are kids that, in my opinion, their potential is at risk.
Right.
And so it's up to us to defend the potential so they can walk safely through, have safe passage through childhood, so they can have the emotional competency, make better decisions.
Great, thank you. Questions of staff? Does anyone like questions of staff? You're good. Anyone? Questions of staff? No questions of staff? Okay. Well, I just have a quick one of staff. Mr. Berlinger, through to you. How would you see the opportunity of engagement with Big Brothers and Big Sisters? And of course, there are other organizations as well, but could you comment on that?
Through the chair, we've already begun meeting with Big Brothers Big Sisters. My staff have had initial meetings. I agree with absolutely everything Leanne said.
That's unusual.
Thanks.
I'm just saying.
In her presentation, in her responses to questions, we are very happy to work with that organization and see an improvement in mentoring possibilities across the board.
Okay, thank you. To speak, Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have the letter before you, the recommendations before you. So I've been the city councillor. My previous renditions of our wards, I represented Ward 44. I had 2 neighborhood improvements in my ward. The current rendition, I have 5 neighborhood improvements. So I will show you, this is the City of Toronto. This is the neighborhood improvement area map that we follow, the neighborhood improvement areas. This block of orange in the southeast corner of Scarborough, except for one little corner, which the neighborhood is called Guildwood. That entire orange block is my ward. I have 5 of the 31 neighborhood improvement areas in the City of Toronto in my ward. It's the area of Toronto where I proudly grew up. I grew up just south of Kingston Road in Galloway. But some of the stats that I talked with Ms. Nicole about, so 30% of youth today in the city of Toronto under the age of 19 have no exposure to any mentor, adult mentor whatsoever. What that does is it trickles into the education system, where 55% of youth that don't have any type of adult mentoring take place are not going to go to college or university. They're going to get to high school, and that's it. If you have an adult mentor, the chances of you going into university or college in Canada or elsewhere on a scholarship is increases by almost 2 to 1. The number of kids that I grew up with in my neighborhood that come from single-parent families that either ended up in a gang or never got to college or university, ended up working in a low-paying job because that's as far as their education took them. You like to say you can count them on one hand. I need more than both hands and both feet and probably a lot of other hands and fingers and toes in this room for those people that I know that just didn't have that mentor that they needed to get them through. As Ms. Nicole said, for every dollar that's put into the mentoring system, we see a $23 return on our investment, which is incredible. The youth that I deal with now as a city councillor that need that mentoring, that need to go through a system where they're going to get, even the people that are mentoring, get the proper training around trauma and crisis prevention, critical mentoring to help them succeed. The 40 assets that I mentioned in the report that I learned about through my research, and Ms. Nicole was saying a lot of youth without mentoring, they're only exposed to 10 of those 40 assets. I'm very thankful I came out of a middle class, middle income, blue collar home where both my parents were there. My brother and I were looked after. We had lots of resources at the time. East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club. We were in, I was involved in Scouts Canada when I was a kid. I'm still involved in Scouts Canada. And one of the most jarring things that happens to me more often than not at the end of the year, because I look after the leaders of myself, we look after so many kids coming from single parent families. More often than not, it's the mother. The single parent is the mother. And at the end of the year, mothers will come to us and they'll give us big bear hugs. And the first time it happened to me, I looked at the mother and I was like, what did I do? She said to me, you did everything right. The problem is that my child, you're the only male role model that my child sees up to grade 7. You're the only male role model my child's had up to that age. I don't have any brothers. My husband left me a long time ago. All the teachers in the school have been female. You're the only role model, right? I was almost in tears the first time it happened because I only had their child, like looking after their child for 90 minutes a week. That was it, 90 minutes. So, when you look at the area that I represent that has a youth unemployment rate that's twice the average of the city of Toronto, I need more youth mentoring. That's why I'm here. I'm glad that Ms. Nicole saw this report and came in this morning. I'm looking forward to staff doing more. I know they're doing a great job, but there's much more that we can do. To have that youth unemployment rate twice the city average is a huge detrimental impact on my community, and it trickles out not only across the education system, the employment sector, and my community as a whole, and I need that to stop. And I think improving the youth mentoring that the youth in my neighborhoods get is one of those steps, and that's why I've asked as well for 7 to 11 to help build that foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ainsley. Okay, any further speakers? Councillor Lai. Thank you.
I guess I wanted to just thank Councillor Ainsley for bringing this recommendation to us. And I have heard the presentation and really hit home because there's a lot of youth out there that needs our help, and that we need to prevent them from going into the gang lifestyle and all those things. And I guess what I wanted to add is that there are a lot of new Canadians, especially in my ward. I'm very thankful that there's no NIAs in my ward, but it doesn't mean that there isn't anything that we don't need any help. And by speaking to Chris earlier on about the NIAs, he mentioned to me that I think Melvin was on this map, and then they lifted because we did a good job on that one. And I'm very happy actually to see more stories like the Melvin story to come to to make it the whole Toronto wide. And I guess staff, I think when we're doing our recommendation, I would suggest that you reach out to some of these new Canadian organizations that actually would have the same passion, would do it for the youth, that people that don't speak the English as, their English is a second language and all that kind of, English is not their mother tongue. And I think we can actually expand this whole thing into a more, in some of the communities that actually needs those kind of a support. So I just like to thank Councillor Ainsley for bringing in. I would be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Okay. I too just wanted to thank Ms. Nicole for being here. We had an opportunity to speak a few weeks back. I was not aware at the time of the volume of and the magnitude of work that Big Brothers and Big Sister did other than your bowling. I was aware of your bowling activities and so on. So I was quite not too badly, actually. I was quite impressed with the presentation and the overview, and the recruitment, the screening, the matching, the mentoring, and all the things that you do. But what really is helpful to me, because it's really important for us to measure things. If we don't measure what we do, we can never be assured that we're successful, and in fact, we can't balance and interest, right, with his financial resources and impact. And so it strikes me that in many of the things that we're trying to do for young people, because we've all come from somewhere. We didn't arrive in our suits and looking as debonair as Councillor Ainsley and Councillor Cressy and so on, and I'm trying to catch up to them, as you can see. And we've all had some help along the way. Every single person who has arrived somewhere globally has had some help. A teacher, a neighbor, a policeman, a fireman, a mother or a father, an uncle, what have you. We've all been helped. And it appears that there's a great crack in our system right now where there's a need to help more young people. And oftentimes when we're trying to deal with these things, we're trying to figure out, well, what do we do and how do we actually do it? Well, if the answer is to the right or the answer is apparent and we're just not touching or reaching out to it, then I think we need to kind of, pull the screens back. And that's part of what Councillor Ainsley is requesting. It's like, look, we have organizations that are doing many of these things. How can we partner with our team and so on to make this happen? Mr. Berlinger and others and so on are open to that. And of course, we have to go through an assessment process and so on. And that's done, and that's being done. Councillor Ainsley pointed out that he has 16% of the NIAs in the city. I have 0.06% of them, which is only 2. And that's a big deal. And so you're always facing the pressure, whether or not it's 2 or 5 or more, of trying to respond because you hear things, whether or not it's on the news, another incident occurred and so on. Because what I'm learning, and I'm talking to some of the young people, they become essentially, detached from a lot of the things that we as adults and we as leaders are attaching ourselves to, the significance of it. Another shooting, for some of those young people, it's as if they're throwing a basketball and scoring a hoop, basically. It's like that. It's really doesn't have a consequential, emotional sort of attachment. And so we need others to help them to ensure that they're not detached from some of these angst and things that are taking place in our society, because that can't become normal. We have to unnormalize that. And so I'm looking forward to us working with your organization. I'm looking forward to us being able to reach out to help the young people and so on. I had a meeting with the Deputy Minister for Community Services and so on, and we talked a little bit about this age situation. We were not veering enough into the lower ages. We have a tendency to think that it's just the people at the higher age. The unfortunate thing is that at the higher age, they're harder to reach because their mentality is just so cemented in a perspective or a view. We have to capture the young people at a younger age in order to help them into opportunities and so on, as opposed to leaving them to fend for themselves. And we've dealt with all manner of issues in this area of trying to help young people. And I think that it's really good that we're focusing our attention with looking at how we can partner with other agencies and so on so that we can arrest this problem in order to ensure that the development of our young people is focusing on being productive as opposed to being destructive, and to help them to feel that their lives are of value, they're worth something, and that in fact they at the end of the day realize that not only are they loved but valued and respected and so on. This is part of the work your organization has been around for 105 years been doing. Looking forward to working with you and advancing the opportunity and so on. Thank you. All right, so members, the last item, we're going to, we've received Councillor, we're going to direct this to staff to obviously deal with this. So all those in favor? But
or are you adopting it?
we're adopting it, actually. Let's adopt it. And so we're adopting the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, and I think that's it, actually. We are at the end. So motion to adjourn. Councillor Lai, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to the staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam DCM. Thank you.